Hey everybody, just want to do a quick update. As you know, I've been talking about MSTR and the coin complex. And what I mentioned about 10 days ago is that I'd like to see this skew get a little bit more neutral here. So what this means is that anything below the zero line is going to represent calls being more expensive than puts. And you can see down in here in November, calls were very, very expensive. And I mentioned that was probably an exhaustion move in terms of that upside call skew. And so it kind of kept it, the stock ran up very, very violently, very drastically. And we had that big pickup in skew. And I've been talking about how in MSTR really, really look good. And sure enough, they've been absolutely fantastic because you've been benefiting two ways from Delta, basically, as MSTRs come down, you're going to benefit from those calls you've sold coming down as well, but also from the Vega exposure, right? You're short Vega, and what that means is you benefit from this drop in implied volatility. So you can see sort of the average for the year implied vol at the money is kind of around 102, 103. 101, it says right here, quite a bit higher than that, right? So we've seen 110, 115, 120. Time we've dropped maybe 10, 15 vol points. Look at this, we're down to almost in the sort of 96 range. So really, really nice benefit from those cover calls. But what I've been saying is, listen, watch for a couple of things here. Number one is this skew starting to kick up a little bit. Typically with these products, you're going to see upside skew kick up when they go up because these are sort of flight to safety kind of, sort of gold type things, right? People rush into it when they hire, not very typical of your sort of normal stock movement. So these things act a little bit differently from a skew and volatility perspective than, say, the S&P or sort of your regular run-of-the-mill stock. So, but what we can see here is the pickup, relatively speaking. They're not more expensive. I'm not looking for them to be, the puts are picking up. I'm not looking for them to be quite a bit more expensive than calls because they tend to not really get to that point. We can see here very occasionally you'll see those puts get a little bit more expensive, but really the best you can expect in a product like this is probably for them to be about even. But that on a relative basis is meaningful, right? You're going to go from very expensive calls to very balanced call put skew, which is what the signal from my video about it 10 days ago. I said, listen, we're going to look for this to get close to that zero line before getting a little bit more comfortable with finding a bottom in MSTR. So let's take a look at MSTR, what it's doing here. Out of this trade, I had positions on. We did fantastically well in the community. I had a coin position on. We did very, very well in that position. And I've been out of this complex because I don't like what I'm seeing. And I see that Bitcoin is kind of topping out around that 100 grand level. And so we're pulling back here. We can see today we've seen that top up around 100 grand. We're not really that far from 100,000, down about 91, which I think we really need to hold 90,000 here to feel good about owning Bitcoin or some of these other products. But in the meantime, I think you want to watch for this skew to kind of normalize a little bit back to that zero line. I don't know if you can call that totally normalization, but that's going to represent where people are starting to really kind of panic a little bit to the downside. And mention over the last couple of weeks is that I'm looking for this vol to keep dropping for an opportunity. So I think at some point here, the skew is going to be interesting as a signal, but it's not going to mean getting in necessarily puts in something like this. I think there's a different kind of structure that can play the upside potentially in a bounce back in Bitcoin and MSTR coin and some of those other names. I think that bounce back is going to also involve a big jump back in volatility. So you're going to want positions that are long Vega, that are long Delta to the upside if you want to play for that bounce to the upside. And so there, you got to make sure that your Greeks are aligned, right? So being an option trader is really understanding where is your torque coming from? Is it from Delta? Is it from Vega? Is it from Gamma? There are different ways to kind of look at things, and there are different structures that are going to be more appropriate for a given viewpoint and expression. Now, if things get, I've said recently, I think things could, Bitcoin might see the high 70s again. So I think you have to definitely watch out for that. If things de-risk a little bit more in markets, especially, we might see that bleed into the coin complex even a little more, even though MSTR is well ahead of that. The horse is out of the barn on that sell-off. We could see Bitcoin down around high 70s, which would get us back to where it really broke out for the Trump win. And so I think you've got a lot of people who've piled in, who've been waiting for that 100 grand, who've been selling. And I think you could get, as Bitcoin typically does, you get a little bit of a shakeout from weekends. Maybe we get a little bit more of a shakeout and maybe even breach that 80,000 level. Maybe we kind of settle around 80 as that's a nice round number, but we could get down into those high 70s. That's where I think this starts to look very, very interesting for some upside plays and that next leg up, which I think should take us maybe to 125 to 150 in 2025. So these are some of the things I'm looking for. I hope you guys learned a little bit from that. I think at this point, we need to really hold this level, that 300 level on MSTR. We held that level the other day pre-market and bounced all the way to 375. Now we're revisiting it in the regular market, which is much more noticeable for people, whereas that pre-market price was just kind of a blip. It came and went. If we break through this very long trend line here, I think we could be in trouble down to around 280, which would be that gap fill from back in here. I don't have the MACD on this chart right here, but the MACD is pointing straight down. And I did say on the weekend, I'd like to see that bottom moving average start to curl up towards the signal line in the MACD. If you don't see that, that means this downtrend is still very much intact and very much a warning. So I think very much if Bitcoin breaks down here, there is, all bets are off on something like MSTR. It could get down to 240, 250 very, very easily. So a space where you want to be a little bit careful here. If you need to get involved, think about having some protection as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll see you in the next video.